This video has been brought to you by Two Hats Publishing, Lambda Weekly Show by KNON, and AIDS, non-discriminatory, will kill anybody it can.
Sister Mayland with the DFW Sisters, and today we are doing our Veil of Remembrance. We started at Fort Worth, we worked our way over to Dallas, and we ask anyone that's lost anyone to HIV or AIDS to go ahead and to write the name of the loved one on the veil.
Good afternoon.
Write any memories, any prayers,
World AIDS Day Dallas.
Whatever you want to write on there. It's fine.
Exciting afternoon planned for you.
It's a wonderful experience. It turns out to be remarkably
If there's any
healing
other
for a lot of
volunteers that are here to help, please come right over here and see Jolene, and she will get you started.
Sounds great.
But right now, we have a
Good morning and welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet and I am here in the studio. Oh, no, I'm not here in the studio with anybody. The late Patty Fink is not here yet. We'll see if she is. If she does come this morning, and of course she will, but we haven't heard from her. Anyway, so we're just going to be here in the studio, just the three of us talking. I'm talking to Sister Bertha and Sister Ophelia. They're with the DFW Sisters. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And I'm glad you got fully dressed for this, but this is radio, and you didn't have to fully doll up today.
Well, that
We
would have
have
saved
the
us.
glitter.
Would have saved us a few hours.
What have saved you? Now, explain what the DFW Sisters is.
We are basically a chapter of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence based in San Francisco. It's a worldwide order. We basically are gay nuns. We're not all members are gay, but we're here for the gay community mostly. We go around passing out condoms and lube and having a good time and just making sure that everybody is enjoying life and we're spreading joy, and that's at the heart of it. But then there's the serious side of education and just helping out the community, fundraising, that kind of thing.
So spreading joy. You're just like regular nuns. You spread joy.
Exactly.
And that stigmatic guilt.
The reason that we had you on today is tomorrow is World AIDS Day.
Right.
And AIDS education really is one of the big missions of the Sisters.
Yes.
What's going on tomorrow for World AIDS Day? And we'll talk about this a little bit more throughout the show.
We'll be going around the Metroplex with the Veil of Remembrance, letting people sign names, dates, memories on it. We'll be starting out for the celebration vigil at Main Street Park. And then on to Cedar Springs and going through the bars and letting people sign it.
Yeah, you're saying sign the Veil of Remembrance. Tell us, what is the Veil of Remembrance exactly?
The Veil of Remembrance is this year, what did you say, 4 yards of fabric that Sister Ophelia will be wearing as her veil that night. It basically, we will have Sharpies, and it gives you an opportunity to write either names and dates of people who have passed on or memories of those people, and then we keep the veil, we protect it, it stays in our archives for ever, or we don't
display
do
maybe at other events.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe at a later date.
Okay, so when you first hear the Veil of Remembrance, you can write a name, you can write a date of somebody who died. It sounds, yeah, very nice, very nice. But it has a much bigger impact than that.
And for some people, they're kind of, whatever about it. And then when they discover that they can sign it, put that memory of a loved one on there, they can become very emotional. It will finally hit them. And it's, the memory. There's power in that memory, and that way we never forget.
And you know something, it's very similar to the quilt. And for anybody who doesn't know what the quilt is a project where people put together 3-foot by 6-foot panels in remembrance of somebody. And it can basically be anything, but it remembers a person or a group of people who died. And usually you sew on their name, very often the dates, and then something about them so that you remember who they are. And I thought, oh yeah, the quilt, I don't sew, I'm not going to do a quilt. But then I was in Washington, D.C. when the quilt was being displayed, and my partner's quilt was there. And, oh, God. Yeah. I mean, I was a mess that weekend, and kept going back to it, and it's just really emotional. The Veil of Remembrance, though, is something that's very similar in intent, but it doesn't take as much work to do in a way. Right. But somebody might go up and write a name, and you said this as we were talking before, and then go away, then come back. Right. So what happens?
Bertha was talking about that.
We basically, it's almost like priming a tip jar when you first start, because when you first lay it out on a table, it's just a blank canvas, and you've got all these Sharpies and people kind of standing around looking at you funny, and nobody wants to be that first person. So last year, several of us went in and we started writing. Just started with names and dates, and then would write a memory. And we kind of stood around and waited, and finally people would kind of inch up and ask permission to write on it. And they would start off with a name and go away for a little bit, and you could see them getting kind of emotional or watching from a distance as other people were writing. And they would come back again and write a little bit more, write memories around that name, and then start to get emotional, leave, come back. And it went on like that for a few hours. And, it was amazing to see how many people who had no intention of ever going up to the quilt suddenly had, a list of 10, 15, 20 names, and, were crying, very emotional, and it really opened them up. And so it's something very special to see and witness.
And then you have the ones that become so emotional over it that they can't write the name. And I was asked several times throughout the evening and day to write a name and a date or a memory to go with it. And so the Veil last year is tear-stained, truly.
And this is Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taff, and I'm here with Patty Fink. We're talking to Sister Bertha and Sister Ophelia there with the DFW sisters. Patty, I realize in the almost 30 years we've been on the air, this is the second time we've had nuns on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the other one was Sister Janine Gramick, who is a Catholic nun who started a ministry that's worked for gay and lesbian rights for 30 or 40 years now. And I did introduce her as my second favorite nun after the flying nun. I did ask her, I don't know if you remember, one of my first questions to her was if she had ever flown, and she said no. So I need to ask the two of you also. And she's an actual, Catholic nun.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can't, have you ever tried flying?
In the early stages, I think we did. All of our different coronets, which is our headpiece, all the different... Wimples or cornet. It just depends on the style of it and region and area and all that. But we tried so many different styles, and so I think a few we were trying to figure out how to fly. So we did actually pattern a couple after the Flying Nun. We really wanted that look, but then we realized that's really hard to take pictures in and.
And just
deal with in a bar.
And,
exactly.
So,
And then when
practicality over flying.
Yeah,
in your case.
absolutely.
I want to meet a real flying nun.
Give us a good windstorm here in Texas.
we'll
we
try.
could be able to get one up.
Apparently, we're just going to have Sally Field on.
Yeah, there you go.
That would be the solution. She'll know.
And I think that's true. The DFW Sisters have a number of, well, they do lots of fun things, but some very serious, a very serious side to them. And one of them, we were just talking about some sister moments. But also tomorrow is World AIDS Day, and they're participating in several of the events. Things that are going on tomorrow, downtown at 7 p.m., there's going to be a big remembrance in Main Street Gardens, which is right next to Momentum Tower place. What's it called?
The Mercantile?
Mercantile
Yeah.
Building, thank you. I'm confusing Mercantile Bank's building with their ad from 30 years ago.
Yes, you are.
I just shows where what century I'm living in. AIDS panels, as well as the Veil of Remembrance that you do. Do you find that there's a generational split between old people like Patty and younger people who really just have a different view of what AIDS is?
We're finding that the younger people don't even know what the quilt is.
They have no clue.
Yeah, which is appalling, actually, to me. It's surprising because there's so much of our history tied up in that quilt, and for that to get lost to the next generations, that's very sad to me. So yeah, we've done some explaining, a lot of explaining about the quilt, and that ties in a lot with our education of the younger generation about AIDS and HIV, and because most of them are of a mind that they can live with it, and it's not going to hurt them, it's not going to kill them or anything like that.
It's going to pop a pill and they'll be fine.
They'll take a pill and they're fine. They don't think about what those pills do to their bodies.
How many of them they have to take every day, multiple times a day.
Yeah, and you stop taking them. There's a whole mess of problems you get into, and they don't realize that. And I've even been told, well, I would rather just go ahead and get it so I don't have to worry about it.
Oh,
And
you're kidding.
No.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, we had a little education. So yeah, we're finding that they never saw people dying of AIDS. They never lost their friends. They never were going to multiple funerals a week. They just didn't see what it did to you, and what it still does, and what it still can do. They don't see that. So.
I remember the first time I was talking to somebody at the AIDS Resource Center, and this is probably about 10 years ago, which was 3 or 4 years after the medications first came out, and people working at the AIDS Resource Center said they didn't know anybody who had died of AIDS.
Wow.
And that, on the one hand, horrified me. On the other hand, it was like, oh, but that's a good thing.
Right. It's kind of it's this little weird catch-22. I mean, yay, we're not dying on a regular basis anymore, but you become complacent, and then you have this whole generation growing up that don't see any repercussions to it.
Well, I was really shocked about the ignorance in our youth in general about our reality, the reality of our rights and our, as they were. In 2003, when Lawrence v. Texas was before the Supreme Court and the decision came, and that day there was a big rally at the Resource Center with lots of different groups, lots of big crowd, lots of television, because it was a Texas case.
Right.
And here we were in Texas. It was actually in Houston, but still it was Texas. Very big decision. It changed our world as the GLBT community. And when we were done, my partner Aaron and I went down to the Strip and went into one of the bars there. And kind of on the corner where Hunkies used to be. A TV camera they'd set one up on top of the roof to film the dancing in the streets. And of course there was none. So we go in and we're talking to some of these young people. They didn't know anything about Section 2106. They didn't know anything about what that really meant, what that, how it was used to criminalize all gay people in Texas. And it was just stunning. It was a slap in the face, I felt, that they didn't know this stuff. But it's not just about HIV and AIDS, that a lot of young people are clueless, absolutely clueless.
Just gay history in general.
And that's not even real history. I mean, it was overturned in 2003.
Right. But, I'm appalled at the people who don't know what Stonewall is. I don't understand how you can be gay and not know what Stonewall is. That just doesn't compute to me. So.
And it's like David said, maybe it's a horrific thing, or maybe that's a good thing, that they feel they can live their lives and move on and not be faced with anything that's happened in the past. And so recently in the past. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago that, people were getting triple carded and stuff in the bars, and bars were getting raided right here in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it hasn't been that long. It really hasn't. Of course, I do work elections, and election day we see, these people come up, and they must have been born past this date in, 1990 or 91 or something. I just freak. It's more than that now. I think it's 92 or 93. And I'm like, what I was doing then?
You're doing Rick Perry math. You realize.
I realize, yeah.
You have to be 21 to vote, right?
Right. 21, and you need to vote 6 days after Election Day.
Right.
That would be ideal. Oops.
But that's a whole nother show.
But, speaking of, I remember seeing the quilt in the early 90s. It had come to Fort Worth. And so what a stunning experience. And fortunately for everyone who was moving through it very, very slowly, reading all the panels, taking it all in, there were, boxes of tissue parked around this big kind of Coliseum floor. But it was incredibly moving. Just amazing.
I did the Lone Star Ride earlier this year, and that raises money for the AIDS Resource Center, AIDS Services Dallas, and AIDS Outreach Center in Fort Worth. And for the closing ceremony, we had, I think, 10 panels of the quilt that were laid out. And the people from Cure, who are the ones who bring the quilt panels in, I know them, and they saw I'm sitting in the front row, and everybody else is looking at the quilt, and I am just in tears. I mean, through the whole closing ceremony, I'm just so, and everybody's looking at me, and so after the actual ceremony, I said, "Okay, come here," and I just grabbed a group of people, and I said, "I want to tell you who this is."
Yeah.
This panel, this is Cedar Springs. This is the original owner of the Roundup, and this is the original owner of Hunkies, and this is the original owner of Tape Lender. And they're all right there on this one panel, who nobody else knew from that group there. And let me tell you about this panel. And these are people who worked at the Resource Center. And I was going, and there were people from the Resource Center who were there, and I was explaining to them who these people were. And I'm just in tears. But I mean, that's the power that can have.
Absolutely.
So.
And it was a period of time, when people we knew and loved and cared about were just dropping right and loud.
Well, the sisters, in, what was it, 84, the San Francisco house was approximately 20 members. And by the end of that year, they were down to 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they were seriously wondering if they were going to continue.
Right.
And thankfully they did.
How did your group, what is your message for World AIDS Day? You're participating in all of the different events around the area. And what's your message to people for tomorrow?
Remember, and we're still fighting. Myself, I've been positive since '99, and it's still a fight. Every day, you look at that handful of pills. Every day you wake up and go, well, I made it again. And remembering those that fought that fight, and remembering that we still have a long ways to go.
Yeah, within your group, you have a number of people who are positive, some are negative. You have some who have partners who are negative and they're positive, or the other way around. You have some who are younger, who haven't experienced what you have as far as loss.
Right.
How do you get that message across to people outside of your group?
That's a good question.
That's why we have such big heels. We beat it into them sometimes.
Sometimes, I mean, there have been times that, because we pass out bliss kits, which is a packet of condoms and lube, and we've had people take the lube out and say, well, I can use this, and throw the condom on the floor, I don't need that. You'll see a swarm of sisters immediately appear from wherever. And
is that what a group of nuns is called?
A swarm.
A
swarm? Gaggle, you know, we've got a few names for it.
Yeah.
A station wagon up.
Yeah. And that's when the education really starts. And we'll have people standing around that are positive, are negative, are in those positive negative relationships, and say, look, this is why we're still here. This is why we're still fighting. And you know, usually they go away, because we tried in the beginning not to be. We were like, no, we're not going to go out there and be preachy. And there are people that need to be slapped down and preached at. They just do. They won't get the message otherwise. And so we will sit there face to face with them, a bunch of white-faced nuns, 7 feet tall, and you know, this little 5'7" guy. You're gonna stay and you're gonna listen, and they typically do, and they go away with an impression, if nothing else, and they'll remember a group of nuns next time they go to, you know, if they're not going to use a condom, they'll suddenly have a flashback of nuns, and hopefully it's at least a trigger to think about it, you know. So
like an intervention on ignorance.
Right, yeah. I mean, we can't, we're not going to be there to put the condom on for you, but
if asked, we would.
Well, yeah, you know, if you need assistance, just call. But yeah, we don't. We will do whatever we can to spark something in them when that time comes.
And you're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89. This is Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet, and I'm here in the studio with Patty Fink. And we're talking to Sister Bertha and Sister Ophelia from the DFW Sisters. We're talking about World AIDS Day tomorrow. And really, what is the importance of World AIDS Day at a time where there are medications that control this drug? And that's something, Ophelia, you were talking about. You take pills every day.
Mm-hmm. And deal with those side effects every day.
Well, let's talk about what are some of the side effects that you deal with every day, because there are so many young people who just think, well, it's okay, I'll just take a pill.
But I mean, if you listen to any television whatsoever, you're going to hear an ad that spends more time telling you about these really awful side effects than, you know, and then I love the ones where it's maybe for depression or it's for something, a skin disorder or something, and then it says may cause death.
Yeah,
right.
You know, I mean, it's pretty serious stuff.
or depression pills that may cause depression.
Right.
Or suicidal tendencies.
I mean, this stuff is serious.
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, they were chemo drugs because it was, quote, a gay cancer.
This is pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah. I mean, myself, I can, you know, go from wanting to eat 7 times a day down to, when did I eat last? And finally remember it was 3 days ago. And I mean, intestinal distress. You know, some days you just never know what's going to happen.
Right.
insomnia. I mean, there's so many side effects. And if you tried treating every one of those with another medication, you'd have to have a wheelbarrow for all those pills.
Yeah.
Right, and if you change one, you could take another one for its side effect, and then you're going to take another one for its side effect.
Right.
I wonder if young people ever really think that through.
No.
You know,
They don't.
I mean, clearly, because they would come to that conclusion pretty quickly.
Right. They think it's a one pill a day solution, and they don't realize the amount of strains out there, the amount of pills you might not, the classifications that you might not be able to take. Plus the long-term side effects. 20 years of taking these pills, kidney failure, liver failure, I mean, you name it. People die from the side effects,
Right.
you know, and so it's just something that they don't think about. And it's something that we tend to point out, you know, that you're looking at a lifetime of medication.
My first cocktail when I moved to Texas caused a spike in my cholesterol. I had been in Dallas 45 minutes and had my first heart attack.
Wow.
And it's like, well, welcome to Texas. Thankfully, I am on that one pill once a day formula, and it's working wonderfully. My body has adjusted to it. I've been on it for 4 years now.
And to be fair, with all of the research and refinement in all these drugs, the drugs that we have now are a lot safer than the ones that originally came out in 1997.
When you were given bottles of AZT and told, we don't know how much to tell you to take, and take 60 pills a day, you know, and that's what you did, not knowing what the effects were going to be and just hoping it worked.
And it did work for some people. Because there are some people now who've been alive for 20, 25 years with HIV. So apparently it worked for them. It's just that for every one of those, there was 100 other people.
And they were lucky enough to get through to a regimen that was actually beneficial.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But even now, the drugs that have come out the last few years, like you said, the one that you're on right now, Ophelia, the one that you're on right now is less toxic and easier to take than what you were on 5 years ago, which is great news.
Yeah.
Which is great news.
So we're talking about World AIDS Day. So there's going to be a lot of stuff as every year, and certainly in recent times, and increased number of events and increased locations all over the world where they happen. Do you see? And when we look at that, we see Africa is an area where HIV and AIDS has really ballooned over the last 10, 15 years, in particular in recent years as well. So, there's a big shift in demographics around the world, and we see that here in Texas too, and in North Texas. Are you seeing that in your events and who you talk to, and more people of color, maybe more women?
We have actually. The African American community, typically it's been a very taboo subject, which is one reason it has spread as it has. We have recently going out or being seen around town, not in Cedar Springs or that area, but just being out in Oak Cliff, picking somebody up or whatever. I've had people walk by and ask, what in the world are y'all doing? What are you celebrating, or what's the occasion? And we tell them what we're about and what we do, and they suddenly are like, oh, thank you. It's very needed. And so it seems like, yes, there is kind of this waking up that is happening.
This video has been brought to you by Two Hats Publishing, Lambda Weekly Show by KNON, and AIDS, non-discriminatory, will kill anybody it can.